This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network.
Hi, this is Don Biggs from the 92-93 Binghamton Rangers.
Hi, this is Brandon Buchinski.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Hi, I'm Corey Cowick, left wing for the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to Bob Howard on the Power Play Post Show.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for June 1st, 2023. This is episode 10 of season 12, and this is episode 383 in the long-running podcast that is the Power Play Post Show. I am Bob Howard. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and welcome back. I took a couple-week vacation, got some good R&R for my brain and for my soul and everything. I actually was down in the beach in New Jersey, one of the locations I like to go visit with my wife. And obviously, today being June 1st, there was some news, obviously, in the Federal Prospects Hockey League. But I got a pretty good interview as well that I did. A good friend of the show, someone who's been on the show 6 times, and today was his 7th time coming on the show. Jimmy Bonneau, a former enforcer, tough guy. He played that role really well, and probably one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in hockey. He will be on the show a little bit later on to talk to us about being a pro scout for the San Jose Sharks. Coaching with the Barracuda for 4 years. He was an assistant coach there under Roy Sommer, one of the longest-running head coaches in the American Hockey League. Well, he is the longest-running head coach in the American Hockey League. So great conversation with Jimmy. I hope everyone enjoys that. You'll hear a player's perspective going in and starting to now scout players, pro players from the AHL and the NHL, and turning in information to a general manager to have them say yes or no on bringing in a player that they're looking at. And scouts are very important in the NHL and even in the American Hockey League to get the best players they can for their teams. So great conversation with Jimmy. I always enjoy my conversations with Jimmy. Today, you'll probably hear about 30 minutes of an hour and a half long conversation that I had with Jimmy Bonneau. Great guy. I've talked to him multiple times. Friends, he's one of those staples. Listen, I interviewed probably about 1,000 players or 1,000 people in the world of hockey in the first 11 years of doing this show. I only have a handful of those guys' phone numbers in my cell phone. Jimmy's one of those guys. Really great guy. Really appreciate it that he came on and everything to talk again about being a scout and what it takes and some of that information there. So let's talk a little bit about the FPHL. Obviously, the expansion draft happened today. And what's really interesting about the expansion draft is that the players that were selected are guys who were not protected. Some of these are really good players, too. And I can tell you from, just talking about Kyle Powell for a second from the Binghamton Black Bears, who was picked up by the Baton Rouge Hockey Club. We don't have a name yet for them. We just call them the Binghamton, the Baton Rouge whatevers, as my friend Gary Ryan likes to say. But either way, players are picked up. There are the assets of those players. Sarge, who works for the FPHL, kind of clarified that a little bit. I think I was misunderstood. I thought they had a week to sign them, and then they became free agents, but apparently their assets up into the opening day rosters are submitted, according to what Sarge said. So that's kind of like one of the notes I took out of this. But there's 2 things that I really noticed, and I think we need to talk about a little bit before we get to the Jimmy Bonneau interview. One thing is that Baton Rouge and Virginia both made selections. I don't think Virginia would have made selections if Virginia is not going to play this upcoming season. There was some question and some doubt. Hasn't been any news since like May 2nd on social media about the Virginia hockey team. So what does that necessarily mean? Well, not really sure yet. They have an arena that needs to still get finished. And, all the things that need, the boards, the ice, making surface, that type of stuff, all has to still be completed. Obviously, they have plans to get those completed. But Virginia and Baton Rouge both made selections. Now, the two teams that players were not selected from was Delaware, which you would all expect, but also Elmira. Now, what's interesting about that is that if Elmira was going to come back, obviously they had a protected list, and they had players on that protected list, and there was unprotected players as well. You would have thought that those players would have been able to be chosen from, but they weren't. That tells me more than likely the league does not believe Elmira is going to be in the league next year. So I think that's probably going to become more evident over the next probably 2 or 3 to 4 weeks. That we'll probably find out something that's not happening. Now, today, the same day, there was also some news that came out, and from WETM, which is one of the news channels out in Elmira, they did a whole kind of like broadcast where one of their reporters was trying to get in touch with Steve Donner, with people from the CCIDA, and they couldn't get a hold of anybody. And basically what they were asking about was a concert that was going to have members from Chicago's Earth, Wind, and Fire concert that was canceled. There's 23 tickets, I guess, that were sold for that. And they wanted to get the information about how people could get refunds and potentially refunds for the Elmira Mammoth season ticket holders. So obviously there's some conversation in Elmira, whether we know about it officially or not yet, that basically says that this team is not going to be playing next year. So I think those players will be part of a free agency or dispersal draft or whatever, obviously coming up in the summertime. So we'll see what happens there. We don't know. But what was interesting was the people that were selected. So a couple of the things that I want to point out was Ian White was selected. Now, he played the majority of the end of the season with the Norfolk Admirals, and I can tell you from talking to people in Chicago, he's reached out to Chicago. He's reached out to the Chicago Wolves because they might go independent, and they might need an experienced defenseman like him. I think the veteran rule in the HL is 6 players. So I think he's hoping to be one of those 6 players. The other interesting note is in Virginia, they selected 3 goaltenders, but they picked Travis Ridgen. Now, anybody that picks Travis Ridgen, and I think Trav knows this, and if he listens to this, which I doubt if he will, he's got better things to do than listen to my podcast and everything. But if he's listening to this, I think he understands what I'm going to say here. He may not be the number 1 goaltender, because they did pick 2 other goaltenders, Ian Wallace and Christian Pavlis. And Pavlis is a very good goaltender and likely could be the starter in Virginia this upcoming season. Travis Ridgen could be the backup goaltender. And if he's healthy, he's gone through he went through a surgery, hip surgery. He's got a great podcast. But that's clearly one of the reasons why, if you're an FPHL team, you might want to bring them in. Now, with the 2 goaltender rule, it's a little bit different, right? Because you really got to have a good backup goaltender. You got to have a guy that you can rely on. Because if your main goaltender goes down, Pavlis goes down, you need Ridgen to step in and win games for you. Can he do that? Has he proven himself yet to be able to do that? We're not really sure. But the upside of Travis Ridgen is he brings a bunch of eyes to your team because people like Trav. Trav is a great YouTuber. He's a great communicator. He's probably a better communicator than he will ever be a goaltender. And that's not a diss. Some people may have a passion and love to be a goaltender, to play hockey, to play baseball, to play football, but they also might be a better communicator as well. Okay? So Nate Burleson He's on CBS. He also does the CBS. He does the CBS This Mornings. He does CBS. I barely remember him as a football player. Of course, I knew of him, but I think he's a better communicator on those programs that he does. His interviews with players and other people, how he interacts with his morning commentators, Gail King and Nate, I can't even remember the other guy's name. Not the point. He also does the Sunday morning pregame show on CBS. He's a great communicator. That's what Trav is. Trav is a great communicator. Trav is a great ambassador of the FPHL. He calls them out on their stuff. I almost said the other word. And he also is a great advocate for them. So I think any team that is smart and wants to market properly your players and your teams, sure, of course you want to put a great team, a great set of players. If you want to win a championship, it's all about managing players. It's all about managing the pieces, right? Chessboard. Trav is a great guy to bring in to get eyes, to get people to look at it. Because once people see his podcast, his YouTube channel, and they watch his stuff, they'll see how great of a communicator, and they will fall in love with him. And that'll bring ticket sales to, obviously, the Virginia team. So that's important. But now Trav has to do the hard part, which is get ready, and he's working on it. From everything that I've seen in his podcast, he's working on it. And he has to get to the finish line, which is becoming either the starter or the backup for the Virginia, whatever you want to call them. Okay, because we don't have names yet. They barely have an arena yet, but that's besides the point. So there were obviously players selected. I think Kyle Powell was one of the biggest players. He's a 4-time Defenseman of the Year. He was selected from the Binghamton Black Bears. He'll be on the Baton Rouge team, likely be on the Baton Rouge team. He's already announced selling one of his jerseys, going to try to buy a vehicle, and I think he needs to get himself down to Baton Rouge by the end of the summer so he can be a part of that. Virginia picked up probably of one of the best pickups there was. Dustin Henning has played over 500 games professionally. He was the captain for Port Huron. He's heading down to Virginia. Very good selection there. Larry Yellowney, who played in Binghamton and Watertown over the last couple of years, he's a really good, underrated player. I think he's going to do well as well. So there are some interesting players here, but you can go on to any of the Facebook pages. I know Minor Pro Hero, Transaction Scores, and more. They have that there, so go check that out. And again, these players are going to be the assets of these two teams up until they put in their game, their opening day rosters. All right, so I want to make sure that's very clear. So very interesting. I just wanted to bring that up and everything. We don't know the status of Elmira, but according to a report out of WETM in Elmira, people are trying to find out how they can get their refunds because it doesn't look like either A, the arena is going to go forward with even doing things with all the fixes they need to do. It might cost just too much money for that small community to do that. It's a shame. I personally think great rivalry could have been had between Elmira and Binghamton. It never really happened in the past. 2 years they were in the UHL together. It was the BC Icemen and the Elmira Jackals. And they got 2 years of that. I think they played in the playoffs once during that small time together in the UHL. Otherwise, Binghamton's either been in the AHL, and then Elmira was in the ECHL, and then eventually the FPHL. So kind of unfortunate with Elmira. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens going forward. There's probably not going to be a lot more news and stuff. I will have Jimmy Bonneau here in just a few seconds. I do want to basically say I'm going to try to pull out a few more interviews over the summertime before we get into the regular season. Now, during the regular season, my plan is to still do the Binghamton Black Bears kind of like mini game recaps after each game. Which will be obviously up in all the podcast ways, Apple Podcast and the Spotify as well. Thinking about doing some sort of YouTube thing, but we'll see if I can get that to happen. But either way, the interesting thing here will be what news comes out of Elmira. Do we have a 10-team league or do we have an 11-team league? What does Virginia call themselves? What does Baton Rouge call themselves? So there's still some stuff that can be discussed and looked at. I think my next interview that I come out with is going to be FPHL related. Obviously, with Jimmy coming on, more NHL and AHL related, and more centered around really Jimmy. Jimmy's a great guy, French Canadian who came down and played a lot of years with the Worcester Sharks, and was a part of the Sharks organization, and still is a part of the Sharks organization. So, and he speaks highly of them. He whatever regime was running the Sharks, he's had nothing but good things to say. But he's also got a really good life. So he's a really happy man, and I'm very happy for him. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show is my good friend Jimmy Bonneau from the San Jose Sharks. He's a pro scout for them, and you'll hear that interview in just a couple of minutes right here on the Power Play Post Show.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators.
Shot here at the faceoff, they win! Ryan Teller, Crispin and home!
You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. Very excited to have this gentleman back on with me. He's been on 6 different times before when he was a player, and now he's a pro scout for the San Jose Sharks, and he is honestly just, a great friend to this show, and I'm very excited to have him back on. He comes to us, obviously, as a pro scout for the San Jose Sharks. He is Jimmy Bonneau. Jimmy, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you on. It's just good to hear your voice and get to talk to you a little bit.
No, it's good to be back, Bob. It's been a while, but it's good to be back talking about hockey.
Absolutely. All right, so Jimmy, when we talked to you last, you were obviously playing with the Worcester Sharks, and then I know that you played one more season with the ECHL's Rapid City Rush and everything. Wasn't the first time you played in the ECHL. You kind of started your career in the ECHL. Now you're a scout, and you played. You actually were a scout, and then you helped was as an assistant coach with the San Jose Barracuda for 4 years. But now you're a scout, and your mindset and the way you think about hockey probably has to change just a little bit. What was that change like for you when you retired as a player and then became a scout? How is your mindset different than when you were a player?
Well, you just got to analyze the game. You just got to stay, you take the emotions out of it, mm-hmm. and you analyze what you see impartially. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a certain type of flavor or type of player that you prefer as opposed to another. But when you look, you try to evaluate upside. You're trying to evaluate fit, needs. And you try to come up with the best thing you got. Then you try, obviously, on the pro side, guys are at that point have been identified. They've all signed the pro contract, drafted, etc. So when you get to see them, you try to go early. You got to make a decision. You got to you put your time. You see what you get in the player, and then from there, you report on it as early and as decisively as possible. And then as time goes, if the player changes, it's okay. But at the time, you want to be able, you want to provide a yes or a no for your general manager as opposed to a maybe. So I guess what I'm looking for, my perspective, a little, again, when I was playing, you're into it. You're looking to bring, what can I bring to the team that's going to be our best recipe to win within my skill set of what I have or the expectation that come from my coaching staff. Now my thing is I'm trying to find those players who will take those roles, those fits, those driver, whether it's driver on the forecheck, driver of offense, driver on the special teams. I'm trying to look for these guys, and it comes in different ways.
Now, Jimmy, when you were a player, a lot of people knew you as a guy who was tough, was gritty, would drop the gloves. He would fight for his teammates, that type of thing. However, as I got to know you as a person who would come on my show and talk to me, I realized very quickly that you had hockey sense. You understood how the game should be played and everything. Was that something that you were able to take from your playing days into your scouting days, and even when you became an assistant coach for 4 years? Were you able to take some of that hockey sense and say, this is what I'm looking for? I thought about the game this way, and this is what I'm kind of looking for as well. Or was it more of you were given, I don't want to say given directions from San Jose about what they were looking for? Was it they trusted in you because of what I knew about you with your hockey sense and how you played the game?
I think they showed me an insane amount of trust by hiring me. Raw, straight out of a playing career. I think I had to learn for myself what I liked, what I think can win, how you can build a team. I mean, perspective as a player is extremely different than as an executive,
sure,
or as a scout, and as a, So I was given some great mentorship, and a lot of resources, but not a lot of do this, or do that. You work within a scheme, which tends to give you direction and help you accomplish what the task in front of you is. But really, I will tell you, at first you are confident in what you are, what type of player you like, how you played, but when they start asking you questions and you gotta, this guy, or you can't wobble too much, and it's hard at first. Eventually, again, with hitting the resources people have experienced, you start to know what the recipes for success. There's always going to be a level of risk, but there are things that show consistency in the recipe for success, and those are the things you try to focus on, and then try to see again. Then the little tweaks. Okay, where does he come from? You work a little bit backward. Where does he come from? How much has he progressed within those years? Where were his hands? How's his body? Is it filled in? So you just kind of adapt. But and then once the preparation is made, then you just feel comfortable saying yes or no. It's just how it is.
Now, when you coached for 4 years, you got to coach underneath your former coach, right? So that was probably pretty interesting. I think I probably asked you probably in your playing days about Roy Sommer, but talk to me about Roy Sommer as as the head coach and you're the assistant coach. What was that like to be around him and to continue to learn from him even after you had resigned or retired as a active player?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, I have a tremendous respect for Roy. I see him as, as much more of than a coach or a coworker by now. He's a friend and a mentor, and so is his whole family. His wife Melissa has always been there for me if I needed. Their son Mo, who's got Downs and is very, very present in the hockey community, has been seen, around the AHL community singing anthems. He did it again in San Diego this year and around locker rooms, and he's one of the most attaching persons that I've ever encountered. So it was just great, and obviously he's got his other kids, but that are away. Cass, who's in coaching at Holy Cross, and their daughter Kira is also in New York and are very successful, very great family. So it was great to reconnect with them, learn from them, and at the same time, Roy is a guy. He's on the old school side, so we had a lot of freedom, and our relationship from the past, the fact that our bond that we had from player and coach and friendship that we built even there, allowed him, I think I had his ear too. So it felt, it was rewarding to have a guy of that experience listen to me and engage in conversation and look to work as a team instead of just kind of, again, mentor and work as a team instead of just dictating what he wants done and how it's got to be done and closing his door. So learned a lot. Wouldn't trade the experience I had for the world.
What do you think was Coach Summers' best asset as a head coach? What do you think he did the best as a player, and then also for you as an assistant coach? What was the thing that he did the best to help you?
It was his relationship with his players. His players truly knew that he cared about them before about anything else that was at stake. Like he's been proven as a developer instead of I don't mean to be, but instead of a title winner. He's the all-time win leader, but he's also the all-time game leader. He's got the durability, the consistency, and he's provided help to some absolutely great players along the way. And most of these players, not to say all, because I haven't talked to all of them, but those great players in the NHL, you talk back to them about their time with Roy, and they have a smile on their faces about it. So definitely the relationship that he entertained with his players.
It's one of the things that I will say that with some of the coaches that I've gotten to know and like, as they came through Binghamton, the relationship between a human being that these coaches sometimes can just tap into, right? Whether it's a media member, whether it's another coach on the staff, or whether it's a fan in the stands, it almost represents the same thing that they have sometimes with their players. And I think that's something that you can't ignore, right? I think the first time I talked to you on this show, I was like, I want to have him back on. I want to talk to Jimmy even more, because there's something about the connection that you and I just immediately had, just talking to each other, the way you answered questions, how nice you were, and some of the pleasantries that we have inside and outside of just doing these interviews and everything was one of those things where it's like, so I could see that, Roy Sommer has almost kind of like brushed off on you a little bit, because you understand those relationships and how important they are.
Of course. I think as a head coach, they're everything. I think as an assistant, they're partly everything too. But if a player knows where he stands in relation to the team, the depth chart, the lineup, his performances, he's usually going to have he's going to have more your ear. Or so as an assistant, his relationship is important, that he wants to listen. But if the head coach has let him know where he stands and he wants to, then it tends to be easier. Now, sometimes again, it's those are busy seasons. Guys get checked out mentally. Sometimes guys don't want to hear things. Guys get defensive. Discussion can get long. It's very hard to be efficient with your time. That's what a great head coach does. He's efficient with his time, and he's not afraid to let people then take on, he's confident that they're going to accomplish what's asked of him when he sends the player, to work on his board work, or to see where he stood in the defensive zone, or X and X, because you can't have your hands in everything. There's not enough hours in a day. Like you and I have been walking. We're two hockey passionate guys. We've been talking for probably a half hour right now, So every time you got a player that sits in your office, it can easily turn into that. But you don't have that type of time. If you do it with one, the point of the conversation is going to get lost. It's going to get scrambled.
Sure.
It's going to turn into a conversation instead of more of an assignment or a precision. And then let's assess one thing. Let's look at this. We assess the issue or the thing that we want to work on. Now let's get out there. Let's work on it together before practice, after practice. Let's stay conscious of it during practice. That's what an assistant can do. But if you get caught up too long, then you'll do it with one guy, and if you're in charge of 4, you'll have 11 or 13 or 14, or just looking at what am I doing. And a lot of time, the guys who are not even in the lineup are going to be the ones who are looking for the most time, the most attention, the most they want to try to. So then you may end up, and they're as important, but then you may end up you didn't even get to your guys in the lineup if you go too long. So it's a challenge that shows itself every day.
Without a doubt. Jimmy, when you started playing pro hockey, 2005, 2006, I'm not sure how much social media was around. There probably wasn't a much around back then, and maybe MySpace or something like that.
Facebook, I think, started my first pro year, but it was only the college guys that could have it.
Yes. What that brings me to is now we're in 2023, okay, and the hockey world has changed as well in that time period, right? I think they've kind of tried to phase out as much as the enforcer role player in pro hockey, whether it be in the NHL or the AHL. I think the ECHL tries to still teeter with having an enforcer type of player on the roster and everything like that. But between social media being as grand as it is now, and everybody's got it in some sort of fashion, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and all those things, and that the fact that hockey has kind of changed a little bit. The culture inside of hockey, the way it's played, the way it's talked about has changed a little bit. Do you find that it's more difficult for players today to make it to the NHL or to not be distracted to get to the NHL versus the way it was when you started back in 2005?
Oh, probably, because you got more platform. You got more of a platform to express. It's not just in hockey; it's in life itself. You look at everything now. Before you had a lot less ways to express yourself or to be seen. If you wanted, it was either amongst your friends or even if you had a camera, where would you broadcast that stuff or what would you do with it? So you had to get on TV or get just there really wasn't a whole lot of, I guess maybe a little bit of message boards or something like that, but even so, no, people were pretty clear with that. You were going through the team, doing what the team was asking, putting most of your time within the team setting. Now a lot of guys, I think, want, I can't say a lot of guys, but the option is there if they want, so that the second that the practice or the team mandatory team time is over, that they can just get out of there and start broadcasting themselves or using their time in a different way that maybe brings some money. I don't know really how that works. I'm a little bit on the old school side on that, but I could say that I hate it, but it's the way that the things are. If you don't want to adapt with it, then hate it all you want, but you'll realize that you hate a majority.
But it's definitely clearly different, and I think it's an interesting thing to look at versus 20 years ago to today, how really the hockey world has changed. There's so many just different aspects to the way it was, and I think hockey's played differently today than it was when you started. Does that make it difficult to scout players, or do you still have some core principles that you look at when you want to go to the GM and say, yes, on this guy, we need to bring him in to our organization? Is there still the same core values, core principles in hockey today that there was even 20 years ago when maybe you were even scouted?
Oh, yeah, for sure it does. And the basics haven't changed. Supporting pucks, hitting the net, deception, but it's gotten to a higher level, but traits are off and separation, speed, penetration, that's always been things that you either did it or you didn't. It's a little bit more, the guys are bigger, it's faster, it's at a higher level, maybe right now, but not necessarily. It's just evolution of its time. The guys back then were probably even better than the guys are now, or they would have been the same. A lot of smarts, a lot of guys were three sports athletes and just probably naturally smarter and more gifted in a way, but athletically not at the level that guys are now. But the essence of the game hasn't really changed. Now, you could say, well, when I played, I had my way, but I definitely watch at least 4 or 5 times more hockey than I ever did now. So, right, like I learn and I pick up more about hockey now than I did in my hockey days, if that makes a sense. But I wouldn't trade the experience that I took from the playing days, but like it's a whole other take. But yeah, like I definitely keep learning the game every day. So,
Jimmy, it sounds like to me that you are, in a great place right now. You probably get to spend a little bit more time with the family than you did in your playing days. How has your life definitely changed since retiring from hockey?
I mean, now it's been 8. I don't want to say it's gonna go in my 8 years. Yeah, I retired at 31. I'm 38 now, so I'm going on to my 8. I got 7 years done, 3 as a scout, 4 as a coach. I mean, a lot of emotion goes through it. Like there's definitely a time early on that you think you can still do it. Like you're not unhappy with where you're at, but like the competitor in you, like always has an itch to almost want to get out there. And like then obviously once you start moving away from that a little bit, then you start embracing the other part of things a little bit more. Not that you didn't before, but you didn't realize it as much. How much of there's a long grief that goes with it, with the playing days. But that doesn't mean, that doesn't mean you're unhappy, but it goes with it. For me, so lucky to have the support system that the Sharks have given me, and the relationship that we've maintained. I'm not going to give them all the credit because, I think that I was good to them too when I played there, and I've given them, as much as I can, and loyalty and everything that I can, and tried to get better every day as a hockey guy within the organization. So I don't think it's charity. I think I definitely earned it. But the support and the mentorship and the relationship that I've had under both, obviously I spent 6 years with the past management after my playing career, but so far with the new regime, also extremely happy the way it goes in the relationship that I've created there. So that's the main part. Family always supportive, and just an exciting life. So just kind of stay motivated with that. At time, you got every time that you miss the boys or you realize that you're adapting. Life change, and you just got to get used to it. Got to face the challenges head on, though. If you let it slide and let them pile up, and little things that you're not used to do, and then or out of character, then that's where bad days ahead. But for me, I think I've been able to maintain enough initiative and keep a clear mind. So I'm happy.
Well, let me ask you 2 more questions before I let you go and everything. I know that you cover the kind of the Northeast area and everything, so you've probably seen Hershey. You've probably seen Rochester. They're battled up right now in the Eastern Conference Finals. Hershey's got the 3-2 lead right now in the series and everything. What can you tell us about these 2 teams individually and everything, and how they play the game? And what are your thoughts? Do you think it's going to be Hershey that's going to finish this out, or do you think Rochester can come back and get over to the finals?
They did it. They did it against Syracuse, so we never know. They got an experienced back end. Subban's athletic. He can. I don't think that he's like the top type goalies in these league, but he can definitely come through and get a game for you. They got some explosive young forwards up front. So you never know. Kulik started scoring again yesterday, and they won the game. They could, but Hershey's a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
They got big defensemen, experience. They're missing Scarbosa, which is offensive, but they, rookie of the year. They got some offense there. They got some size. They got a checking line. Plus, it's Hershey. So, they got not that Rochester doesn't have a long. I played for the Amherst. You know what I think of that organization, that city, as a hockey city, but minor league hockey city. But Hershey is kind of the leader or the top. So they just kind of establish a winning culture there. Not necessarily, but they're used to win and seems to go their way a lot. So now I'm not as familiar with the team out west, but it's Hershey's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Okay, so obviously in the NHL, we've got the Panthers versus the Golden Knights. An interesting matchup to say the least. I think the Panthers have played some of the best hockey I've ever seen with a team, other than the Boston Bruins this year, obviously, and everything. What are your thoughts on the Panthers, Golden Knights? Do you have a pick there?
Well, my pick based on eyes would be the Panthers. I think they played a little bit well, but I think there's a little bit more. It was a little bit more fun brand of hockey.
Sure. Yeah.
And you'd think, well, they got Bobrovsky, the more proven guy. Then you'd want to think that the way that Bennett and Tkachuk have got into the nets and stuff, that, what you say with Vegas, they're maybe the best thing they've done is maybe they made it hard to get to the net, and that's made Hill's life, he's seen a lot of first shot, but he's been able to handle it. Then also they got a full four line, they share the wealth, so they never kind of get too tired or too overplayed. But I think Bennett, Tkachuk get to the net. I think pucks get there with guys like Montour and Forsling, and they can find it. Now, my thing is, if you look at most time when a team caught a lot of hype, as they came to Vegas the first time, for example, with Washington waiting on the other side, or even when the Sharks got there, and Pittsburgh was waiting, and there's just, it seems to, a lot of time, seems to be Montreal had the hype.
Yep.
It seemed like the team that's been there a little bit longer, that's got maybe another final underneath them, that's a little less top heavy, that's a little bit more top to bottom poised, seem to take it over. So my eyes want to say Florida. My head is saying Vegas.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you with that, and it's interesting. You played hockey in Worcester. You've coached in the West Coast and everything with the Barracuda and everything. Isn't it interesting? It's just so fascinating how the Las Vegas sports scene. And now, of course, if there are historians out there listening to this, we know the Las Vegas Wranglers played in ECHL for many years and everything. So it's not like Vegas doesn't know hockey. But I find it so interesting that the Raiders and the Golden Knights have done so great when so many people for so many years said, oh, no, Vegas can never support sports teams because, it's just a tourist town and stuff like that. It is amazing how professional football and professional hockey has really taken over that city.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing about Vegas, though, yes, it's entertainment. They're going to give you great value for right, like side shows and everything's going to be there. But that city, and again, I'm talking things I don't know here. It's speculation of how I see it. It's a new city.
Yeah.
They everything is convenient because it's we need a stadium. It's boom, put it right there. We need an arena, put it right there. There's room for everything.
Yeah. As
of you try to do it and living in Boston right now, you're trying to plug a Dunkin' Donut in here and it's hard. There's no room for it. So and there's enough of them already. But,
it's true though.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
though?
I do.
I feel like they literally went we got the Golden Knights. We just built a T-Mobile Arena directly on the Strip.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Well, we're going to build a practice rink directly in Summerlin on the other side next to the casino. Then, we're going to get an AHL team. What we're going to do? Well, we're going to build one in Henderson directly on the other side for them instantly. It's pretty convenient.
Yeah. But it was good but let's be honest. It was good for both the NHL and the American Hockey League. I mean,
absolutely.
It was absolutely. It's a good deal for both of them. They both have sold enormous amounts of tickets, and they've been a success, and I think that's really kind of what's important there and everything. Jimmy, it was great to have you on. It was great to talk to you again. I hope you have a phenomenal summer with your family. If anything big comes up, I'll message you and everything as we've done in the past throughout these years and everything. It was a pleasure to talk to you again, and I hope to have you back on sometime in the fall.
Of course, Bob. Always a pleasure.
Awesome. And we'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week from the Box Studios Radio Network to keep up to date with the latest news, scores, and interviews by visiting www.pppshow.net. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.